Why did Coinbase finally launch a meme coin, only to launch a second one minutes later, completely nuking the chart and pissing everyone off? Because plot twist, it's not a meme coin, it's a content coin. The latest push by Base to ramp up activity on its chain in its war with Solana. But what really is a content coin, and can they actually live up to the hype that Base is peddling?
It's clearly not a meme coin. Let me be 100% clear. This is not a meme coin. Some people have good experiences, some people have bad experiences.
What the fuck, Jesse?
The fact that we've created a context where people can experiment, I think is fundamentally good.
What's up, everybody? I'm Zach Guzman, and this week we are talking about the new craze in crypto, content coins. Because if you haven't noticed, they're all the rage right now, and people are loving them.
The thing spiked and then crashed, and a lot of people were upset.
What is wrong with you?
Okay, maybe people are confused about content coins, which is why in this episode we're digging into where content coins came from, what they're looking to improve about meme coins, and why they might run into the same problem. And in this episode, we're going to make some assumptions, like that you already understand why some people, including myself, are iffy on meme coins. And ironically, we covered that in a phenomenal episode 2 years ago, when most meme coins were still on Ethereum. And since then, most of that meme coin activity has ported over to Solana. And yet, the episode still holds up. So if you haven't watched that one yet, go check it out. But it's important because it's core to the battle between Solana and Base. Base is a layer 2 built on Ethereum, and its whole purpose for existing depends on there being so much activity being brought on-chain that you need Base to make these transactions cheaper. And if you look at the world through that lens, like Base's Jesse Pollak does, that might explain why suddenly everything that could be on-chain should be.
When we have more media on-chain, when we have more food on-chain, when we have concerts on-chain, when we have games on-chain, when we have our savings on-chain, when we have literally everything on-chain, it's going to reach hundreds of millions of people.
Look, say what you want about Jesse Pollak, but that man can get you amped enough to make you run through a wall. And I know this because he said all that while we were on stage together at ETH Denver. And part of me did want to put everything on chain, and maybe even launch a meme coin. But at the time, I didn't, because like most creators, I was terrified of meme coins. They're impossible to sustain because crypto has the attention span of a fly. And as we've seen with anyone who's launched one, you get called a scammer as soon as the price goes down. And I can say this because if you watch this channel, you'd know that Coinage literally launched a whole series to investigate the inner workings of meme coins with our community by fair launching a meme coin against all my warnings. And sure enough, people aped in and then aped out. And importantly, even though we still haven't sold, and I personally haven't sold, just because the chart is down, people think we've scammed, when in reality, we're only just getting started with the project. Point being, nobody in their right mind should want to take that pressure on. So what is the alternative? Well, one option would look a lot like what Base is trying to do, by shifting the thinking from a meme coin carrying high expectations to just being a single piece of tokenized content. And that seems to be what Jesse is pioneering.
I see that as my primary role as a leader, is kind of creating a space where people can experiment. Because if we're not experimenting when there's less than 1% of the world on chain today, how the F are we going to get to 100% of the world on chain?
And to be fair, this is actually where Solana and Base probably both agree. They both need activity on their chains. Solana has meme coins and Pump Fun as their platform to launch. And Base is going with individual pieces of content that trade, somewhat obscurely, as meme coins behind the app Zora, where creators can upload and launch their pieces of content. And in all fairness, we as a DAO and myself have experimented with both. And Jesse and Tolly have retweeted both of our experiments too. So let's compare how those went. To launch our content coin, I decided to post a clip of our interview with Mantra's founder, JP Mullen, which went pretty viral on YouTube and X, racking up a combined 170,000 views, and I coined it on Zora. Jesse retweeted all this, so I don't think it's necessarily a fair comparison to any post on Zora, but it quickly shot up, and due to people trading it, I earned like $40 in trading fees. But what effectively is going on under the hood is that Zora is just taking our content and doing what Pump Fun already does, which is launch a meme coin. And even though the UX is a little bit less in your face because the chart isn't actually displayed anywhere on Zora, users still need to pay to collect the piece of content, which basically just buys a portion of the token that gets spun up. And while that might seem like a distinction without any real difference, you can at least understand that putting the speculative piece in the token chart more on the back end, while putting the content and collectible element more on the front end, as Base and Zora are trying to do, at least would make sense to a non-degenerate crypto audience of normal people who are new to Web3. But abstracting away all the crypto-native speculative bits like that is certainly going to confuse the shit out of Solana Memecoin fans who have been trained in their ways to get in and get out by selling before a Memecoin creator can dump on you. Which brings us back to our experiment on Solana. Coinage launched our play button Memecoin on Solana to celebrate us crossing 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and earning a silver play button award. Tolly retweeted our fair launch on that too. So again, it might not be a fair comparison to the average Memecoin launched on Solana, but in our experience, the Coinage DAO brought in about $80,000 worth of Solana. But as we highlighted in our behind the scenes series, because people bought the token with the get in and get out mentality, a lot of people sold in the first few hours and the price went down. Then people started accusing us of rugging, even though again, Coinage still hasn't sold any play button tokens. So to be honest, I understand where Jesse's coming from on creators and meme coins and the pressure, because my reputation isn't worth the risk. But Coinage wanted to launch a meme coin, and so here we are. But I do think Solana and Base are getting at pieces of things that can and should work here, because there's nothing wrong with speculation. It just gets bad when meme coin creators set up bad incentives. And there's also nothing wrong with tying a piece of content to a token. I just don't necessarily see the point if there's no reason to pay to collect those things or be early. So what if instead we took the best bits of meme coins and we stripped off the bad bits and merged them with the best bits of content coins? Maybe that would result in a better outcome for creators like me and viewers like you. And that is actually exactly what we're experimenting with right now. Like right now, as you're watching this. And you didn't even know it. Because today, we're announcing that Coinage is going to be burning our play button tokens every month based on how many views we get on X and YouTube. And thanks to the rest of the Coinage DAO passing our latest proposal, we're also locking up our tokens through October. So the supply on the market basically has nowhere to go but down through then. And it all depends on how much Coinage content you watch. So watch, subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe, and the more you watch, the more play button gets burned. In that sense, we may have just created the first ever meme coin that's also a content coin. Or maybe a content coin that's also a meme coin. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. So comment below to let us know what you think. And if you want to co-own Coinage with us, head to coinage.media to mint an NFT and become a co-op member today. I'm Zach Guzman. This was Coinage. Stay safe out there.